Have you ever wondered what you would do if the recession crashed your Airbnb business? If you became cash broke and you could not afford to pay your liabilities, either your mortgage or your rent? Well, it's kind of a real possibility for some of you, and some of you are already running out of business. I have some tips that are going to save you during the recession if you know how to manage your business properly. So these tips are actually going to teach you how to manage your Airbnb business and some tricks to generate some new cash so that way you can pay your bills in a recession if it ever comes down to that. I hope that you guys don't have this problem. Hopefully it never comes to it. But in this video, I'm going to teach you things that you need to know to make some hard decisions to continue to grow and survive. So that way when the recession ends and everybody else goes out of business, you will still be in business and you'll make all of the millions and you'll be super happy that you followed this video, and of course you liked it, obviously. So thanks in advance, and you're welcome in advance. Let's jump in. Welcome back, YouTube world. Outside got a little bit dark and I couldn't continue to record, but that fountain is so cool, isn't it? Here in Las Vegas, I'm staying at the Cosmo, and I had a couple interesting phone calls with some people who are quite nervous about the future of the Airbnb world, and that's why this video exists, is some of you are scared and some of you are out of cash, and that sucks. I mean, it really is such a terrible and stressful time for a business owner to be running out of cash. That's rule number one of running a business, is don't run out of cash. So I want to give you this video to save you, because actually the stuff I'm about to teach in this video saved my business once. When COVID hit in 2020, we had so many cancellations because of COVID that we lost $150,000 like that, super fast. And then bookings were down for about a solid 6 weeks everywhere, and bookings were down for a whole year in Philadelphia. And we really got like scrambled up there in Philadelphia especially. So we had to get super smart, we had to get super resourceful, and I created some really cool tricks to generate some new cash and to continue to grow a business through a recession. One of my students went from 25 doors to almost 400 now from some of the videos that I gave in COVID. And those videos are still up here on this YouTube channel. You can go back and watch those. They are still in a way relevant. But in this video, I want to give you some of my coolest cash generating tips so that way you can go crush it and you can continue to grow your business. I want this video to help break you through maybe feeling overwhelmed about something like a recession or an adverse market, because millionaires are made in recessions. It's the people who study, like you, congratulations, and who can start to see opportunity through everyone else's stress and take advantage of that opportunity and play an aggressive game. I'm gonna teach you to play an aggressive game in this video. And like in all my other videos, I'm dedicated to your personal growth. So I want you to subscribe to this channel so that way I can continue to give you what you need when you need it. We're gonna talk about recessions right now, but we're gonna talk about other things in other markets and other times when opportunities present themselves. So if you don't hit that bell and say, hey, I wanna see every video from this channel, you might actually miss a video that'll make you $100,000. And I can tell you, I've got plenty of students who have made $100,000 that are all over the place. Without further ado, let's actually get into tip number one and start making you some money this recession. If you're gonna be cash broke at the end of the month, or you think that you're going to be cash broke, there are some things you can do. And tip number one is to get longer stays at the very end of a month. Because the way that Airbnb works is Airbnb will pay you for the entirety of a stay up to 1 month of the stay, at basically the day after a guest checks in. So if you're going to be short on cash and your calendar's wide open for the next month, right now it's July, but you'll probably catch this video a little bit later. If it's the end of the month, maybe say 15th or 20th of the month, and you get a month-long reservation for the 25th, when that person checks in, you're gonna get paid on the 27th or the 28th. But you're gonna get paid for all of the dates going through maybe even as far as the 25th of the next month. You get 25 extra days of cash from future days of reservation instead of the cash you generated for the month prior. So you've made 25 days of revenue for the month that you've been in, and you're making up to 25 days of revenue for the next month, and you're getting it paid all in the month that you're currently in, basically generating 2 months of cash for this month. And that way, if you are slightly behind in cash, this will actually give you a cash surplus going into the first of the month, and you can pay all of your bills. Now, since you are borrowing against the future month by doing something like this, you will have to solve next month's cash problem by continuing to do monthly stays that continue to pull from the future or find a new source of cash. And I'm gonna give you some tips for that as well. Believe it or not, a good way to handle running out of cash is to play an aggressive game growing your business. Because if you negotiate right, which of course is one of the things that I teach negotiating with landlords, you can get free rent from a landlord. The cool thing about free months of rent is that you generate revenue on Airbnb or VRBO, and then you don't have to pay rent because you got it for free, which means your cost basis for that new property is lower. If you got furniture that you are making payments on, for example, you got a no interest credit card for 1 year, and I actually just found a couple. I'll probably show you some cards in a future video. I'm finally starting to play with debt, which I normally don't. If you get a no interest credit card, you can buy furniture for a place and you get a landlord to give you 2 months of rent for free. Then you can start generating cash. And on a studio apartment, if you make $3,000 or $3,500 a month on that apartment and you don't have to pay rent, your total cost might be a few $100s a month plus your housekeeping fees, which means you're pocketing $2,500 a month, which then adds to your cash position, which can help you, fund other stuff that you might have expenses for. And this aggressive growth game can then give you a stronger cash position because of free months of rent. And that is actually how I snowballed my business from, having one door in 2015, starting with $4,000 and now having over 120 doors, making $4+ million a year in the Airbnb space and VRBO space and everything else. That's how we snowballed, with no debt, no investors, no nothing, because the cash from the free rent went to get new doors. And that was how easy that was. This is really good for growing your cash position. This third one is one that is another temporary solution and you'll need to find a more permanent solve. So this is really good for like very slow season and you're just kind of stuck and you need to get out of it, over the course of a month or two. If you do some direct bookings and you have consistent direct booking traffic, if you use Stripe for your direct bookings, Stripe will start to recognize how much monthly revenue you get, and they will make you an offer for a line of credit. That offer for your line of credit is probably going to be about 50% of whatever you generate in a month on average, and they're going to allow you to pull down that line of credit and then pay it back over time, and they're just going to deduct from your direct bookings. You'll probably pay 17% of all the revenue that you get, Stripe would take out, and that's how you get, your debt repaid. And the cost of the debt might be like 11% or 12% annual interest, which isn't so bad right now because inflation is nearly 11 or 12% annual anyway. So by doing this, if you did overextend, let's say you picked up too many properties and then all of a sudden you have all these expenses and you spend all of your money on furniture, having that direct booking revenue through Stripe and then having that line of credit is going to allow you to pull that golden parachute and save yourself in that heat of the moment kind of thing. Now this next tip is kind of fun because it's getting into a part of the industry that I don't really touch much, but it makes a lot of sense in a recession. When you do Airbnb, if you own the property or if you rent the property, you have a cost basis, right? You have your mortgage or you have your rent and all that stuff. Now, there is one type of operating strategy for short-term rentals that you don't personally have a cost basis. That's called co-hosting. And any company that gets big enough should add co-hosted properties into their mix because the amount of revenue that you can generate compared to what your internal cost basis is gets like more heavy on the revenue side, right? So with arbitrage or owning properties, say for every $20,000 in revenue you generate, you very clearly have fixed costs in mortgages and utilities and stuff like that. So you might have to give away $10,000 for every $20,000 in operating costs. So your net operating income might be $10,000 per $20,000, which is 50% net operating income, which is good. But a lot of people make between 35 and 50% NOI in this industry. Some people do worse, some people do better. There's always anomalies, but that would be a good responsible range to guess at. But then when you get into co-hosting, you don't pay the mortgage, you don't pay the rent, you don't pay for the utilities, you don't pay for supplies. You get 20 or 25% of the revenue of a property that you manage for, which means every $20,000 you generate, your operating costs are just like your staff if you have VAs or if you have other stuff like that. So that means that your net operating income is going to be much higher. You might have an 80% or 85 or 90% NOI, depending on how big your business is and how much of the stuff you do yourself. Now, this offsets some of your expenses when you enter into a recession. Let's say that now all of your owned properties or all of your rented properties are operating at negative 5% NOI. So for every $20,000 of cash you generate, you actually have $21,000 of total expenses. Well, now if you have some co-hosted properties that are also generating $20,000 a month in revenue, and you get to keep 25% of that revenue, you get to keep $5,000. So now you have $25,000 in revenue for just over $21,000 of expenses. That $5,000 of co-hosting revenue saved you in any instance that you were going to have a loss. So this type of diversification can really help you survive market downturns, which is super fun. Now, to pick up co-hosting in this environment, you actually get a cool opportunity to do so. Because as the going gets tough, there's going to be more distrust. Owners that own homes have co-hosts, and they have co-hosts that they've been using for years. And while everything has been easy, nothing's been wrong. But now that there is, market pullback in some markets and people are spending their money more responsibly, and they're not paying for really expensive Airbnb properties, and they're starting to not want to pay these overpriced cleaning fees, owners are having issues with co-hosts underperforming. And this gives you an opportunity to identify underperforming properties and potentially headhunt them. I teach a script for headhunting, co-hosting in my private stuff. So I'll have a link in the description if you want to like get that coaching and kind of know how to sell people on picking you, then we can talk about it in the future. Now, this next tip doesn't necessarily add to your cash position per se, but actually, hold on, let me change it so it does. All right, this next tip wasn't normally going to add to your cash position, but let me like double down on this. What I was gonna first say is that you can go find people who are selling their furniture and go buy furniture for cheaper, which lowers your like cost of starting up a unit. And I think that right now in this economy is something you should know. You could literally go and find people who are quitting Airbnb and buy up all their furniture at a super big discount and then go find some properties. But what's cool about this is the people that are quitting Airbnb are probably getting out of the same property. So you can find people that are selling their furniture and then go find that landlord and say, hey, I know this person's not paying their rent right now. I'm gonna take over the property. I'm gonna buy out this person's furniture. I'm gonna start paying you the rent. Give me the first month of rent for free and I'll sign a 2-year-long lease. See, look, my financial position's better than them. You can trust me. Sorry that they screwed you. Then the person who's selling the furniture, tell them, hey, I made a deal with the landlord. I'm gonna take over this property and I'm gonna start operating it. I'm gonna make payments on the furniture to you. The furniture is gonna stay right here. I'm gonna give you a deposit on the furniture and I'm gonna make payments on it. So now you didn't have to set up the property, it's already furnished, right? And the reason why somebody else was failing, as long as the reason why they were failing is they don't do dynamic pricing, they didn't take good photos, they just weren't running a good business because they're not good hosts, then cool. If the place has really trashy furniture, you don't want to pull this off because then you're inheriting a problem property. But if the property is good, the furniture is good, you can make payments on the furniture for sale by owner and then tell the landlord, hey, I'm going to come and rescue this deal. I'm going to take over the property, you know, and then just give me a month of rent for free so I can get this thing spooled up and fix the problems and I'll start making the rent payment. That's better for the landlord than trying to evict the previous person, right? And so the previous person's like, yeah, I'm getting out. Thank you so much for that. They'll still pay the lease break fees that they have to pay, but they're, you know, obviously the landlord doesn't have to worry about eviction court or anything like that because you're making an agreement on the condition of paying that person for their furniture and you're gonna pay them a decent price for the furniture that they're not gonna give the landlord a hard time on the way out. And so you've middlemanned other people's failure and now you're taking over Airbnb properties that you can start generating cash on, and that free rent on the front end is what's gonna grow your cash position. And the fact that you didn't have to pay full price for the furniture up front, that's also gonna increase your cash position. Isn't this stuff cool? Isn't it kind of cool? So one thing that I want you to take away from the few tips that I've given you so far is that this kind of stuff comes with experience. And I don't want you guys ever to get overwhelmed in this industry. This industry has a pretty low barrier to entry. You can just pick up a property, pick up furniture, watch some YouTube videos because you subscribe to this channel, and you can know enough to be pretty dangerous in the industry and make some money. But when the going gets tough, when there's a recession, when there's less money in play, property prices are falling because interest rates are going up and consumer sentiment is more panicked and people aren't confident to spend money, you know, all that stuff, then markets can get tough. And only the best people survive. You know, when there are winners and losers, the best people will win and the worst will lose. And so instead of falling out of the bottom, staying studious and, you know, kind of trying to manage your stress level, you can get through this as long as you don't get overwhelmed. And taking these types of things and internalizing them and applying them when needed is going to be what gets you through stuff. This may not be the middle of a recession when you watch this video, so you may not need this stuff today, but you should probably watch this video again and take some solid notes on kind of the applications that I gave you, because what I gave you were, in a way, tricks to get future monies, get an advance on money by pre-selling your property off. How to get a line of credit from Stripe by having consistent cash flow. And that's pretty easy. And this probably will be one of the easiest lines of credit that you could ever get. It's not necessarily the cheapest, and it's not the best debt terms because they just kind of pull it from your bank, but it still counts. And the no interest credit card thing, buying furniture and then starting properties, I don't like advising that you take debt to start a business when you have a lease or a mortgage, because you're taking two debts, right? You're taking furniture debt and you're taking property debt. A mortgage is property debt. A lease is a version of property debt because you still owe that, you know, you have to pay the lease over the course of a year. So it's kind of like a form of leverage. That's double leveraging, which I don't normally advise. But if you can get free rent from a landlord, like 8 weeks of rent for free or better, then that is like getting cash right from a landlord profit. And so taking a no interest loan in a high inflation market is also a hedge against debt. So it's a little bit more responsible now than it used to be. And I think particularly with arbitrage, this is good because free rent and furniture jamming in there while home prices are starting to curl back a bit. You know, we might see a sideways market for 2 years. And if you can hold properties through leasing them, you're helping landlords kind of survive what seemed to be stressful for them. And then if you're the buying type, when the market bottoms out and people start letting go of properties because they're stressed or panicked, you might get a better deal on the property. So this type of arbitrage play where you get free rent and furniture on a credit card could allow you to kind of get into the game enough that you'll be ready to buy a property a year or 2 or 3 down the road. Here's a worst case scenario kind of thing that you can do. And let's say you have a bunch of properties. This is kind of easier to do when you have a bunch of properties. Let's say you don't have the capital to grow. You can't get any more credit cards. You're kind of back against the wall, which would be super no fun. You can move, right? If you have leases, you can move. And you can go prospect for landlords that are going to go give you free rent, pre-negotiate those leases for some free rent, and then you go back to your original landlord and say, hey, your leases are ending XYZ day. I've got an offer from another landlord for 5 doors and they're going to give us 8 weeks of rent for free. And they're going to do a 2-year lease or 3-year long lease. You give that landlord the opportunity to save your leases by also offering you 8 weeks of free rent on a 2-year or 3-year long lease. You have the landlords bidding against each other now for your 5 or your 10 doors. So if the landlord says no, you move and you have a cost of move. But if the landlord says yes, you just got 8 weeks of rent for free on your renewal, which is also super cool. Then you also still have these other doors, which means you could JV, you can find somebody who's going to buy the furniture and you can partner with them, take advantage of the free rent and still grow. Or you can maybe hawk off those leases and go sell them to an interested party who wants to get into the game and say, hey, I negotiated 5 leases with free rent. Who wants this deal? Finder's fee. And you get some extra cash. So that's what I would do if I was absolutely in a terrible position with cash. And the reason why I can talk about this stuff is COVID hit before. And we had some situations where we had to find a way to scrap some cash. Philadelphia was super, super tough when COVID hit. So we went from about 103 doors down to 67 doors. And so we did some downsizing, we did some moving, we sold off some furniture. We took over apartments from Stay Alfred when they went out of business. We got free furniture and free rent. So we survived what was basically like a $150,000 punch in the face by moving furniture, selling off some, taking some free rent, getting some really cool deals. So this stuff actually does work because I used it back in COVID to survive. And I'm seeing a lot of the same patterns today. Topics that will help you understand this stuff would be pricing strategy and accounting. I think those will probably be 2 things you should study if you want to get better at managing your business and managing your finances. I don't teach accounting. I'm sorry to tell you that. That's not my strong suit. I know just enough to, of course, run a business. Rule number 1 is don't run out of cash. And that's what this whole video has been about, right? But pricing strategy I do teach, and I teach a lot of it. So I've got a free playlist here on YouTube with all my pricing strategy stuff. I do have this premium pricing strategy product that teaches rule sets and all this other crazy stuff that I do when I get really deep into my pricing strategy. But for what I'm teaching you now to get through like a recession and a high inflation market and a market of uncertainty, the stuff that I teach in my free stuff is all you need. Honestly, you don't need to buy any of my educational products to get through this. So I encourage you to go check out that playlist. It will do you quite well. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I am down there with you. I will read them and I will respond. And as always, you have my deepest appreciation. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the other side.